I like solving issues for other people. It just makes me feel valued.
Okay.
Yeah, it just makes me feel I value myself. I take pride in helping people.
Hello and welcome to the International Student Experience, a Swansea University podcast where we delve into the stories and journeys from students from around the world who've chosen to study here in the UK. Today I'm joined by Barry. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dad.
If you can just give yourself an introduction, say like who you are, where you're from and what you studied.
My name's Barry, currently studying in Swansea University for International Accounting and Finance. I've been living in the UK for the past 8 years. But I am from China. My province is called Hebei province, which is the area that surrounds Beijing.
How was your educational journey? How did you get to the UK? Like, what did you study before you came here?
I came here fairly early. I did 1 year of high school in China. That's like sort of like GCSE equivalent. Mm-hmm. Then I came to Hereford for A-level. So I did two years of A-level there. Then I went to University of Bristol for my undergrads. My undergrad was in chemistry, actually. So which is like quite different from why I pursue my master. Yeah, then there's the pandemic. So my study, like I spent like 4 years in Bristol instead of like typical 3 for undergrad. And then I went on for like I think it was like 3 months course in the college in Swansea, because like going from chemistry to accounting finance was like a big jump, which the admission team basically said, go for 3 months in the college and you can safely go on to pursue a master in Swansea then. So I did that and that's it.
What inspired that change from chemistry to accounting is quite different. So yeah. What was your thought process like? What made you want to do that?
Part of the reason was just myself. I couldn't crack it, but like I've always been a person who loves STEM, like science subjects. The main reason I chose chemistry for undergrad was basically just my head teacher when I was in Hereford, and also my tutor or something like that equivalent when I was in high school in China. They were both chemistry teachers, which basically just led me to the path of pursuing chemistry. The other reason is that both of my parents work in finance. So they both work in banks. And so it's kind of like falling back to the family traits, sort of like that. I also love finance and economy, that sort of thing. The constant influence from your parents, I always found them interesting. When I was like trying to choose my career, like back when I was 18, like my parents, especially my mother, really didn't want me to pursue a career in finance. Part of the reason was like she thinks that it doesn't really contribute to the society.
Okay.
Yeah, she feel like just like playing with money, that sort of thing. She wanted me to like, make, sort of like contribution to society. But, the opinion shifted.
Both your parents in finance, have they always been in finance? So you've always been exposed to that?
Yeah, basically. They went to the same university.
Okay.
And after they graduated, they just both ended up in banks. Yeah, for the past 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How exposed were you to finance? Like, was it just, my parents work in a bank? Or did they bring their work home? Were you able to see what they did?
They don't really bring the work home, but I've been listening to them talking to each other. So my hometown isn't the hometown for my parents, for neither of my parents. So none of my grandparents were around. So my childhood was just basically home alone with all the bad guys. Ever since when I was like 5 or 6, I just started to spend like lots of time alone. So there's like this sort of tradition that they do the final sort of like audit or something like that at the end of the year. At that time, it's sort of like a tradition or something like that all employees for the banks, they just work until midnight. So they both have to work always on that day, and they won't come back home until like 2 o'clock in the morning. So that has been my core memory for a long time. So they don't really bring work home.
Okay.
But because like they just work at their office all the time, but they talk about them. Like I said, my grandparents weren't around, so I'm like very close to my parents, and my mother and I just really likes to chat. And the other thing is just my father started to work away from home, like away from my hometown. He was deployed in another city for, I think, 6 years. So during that time it was just me and my mother. He come back probably like every other week.
Oh, okay.
So he spent the weekend with us. Then he went back. Considering China, it's actually quite far away. Probably somewhere from here to Scotland.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's my presumption. Wow. I don't know the specific numbers. I've only recently realized how small Wales is.
Yeah. It's not a massive place.
Yeah, it's like only about a third bigger than my city.
Really?
Yeah, and the population is like about 3 million.
Yeah, it's about 3 million.
Yeah, which is like the population we have in our like city district in my city, which is like quite astonishing for me personally.
Have you been able to talk to her about your course and what you're doing with that?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of stuff I learned in my course, she learned it like 30 years ago, basically. Yeah, I've been talking to them a lot, especially when it comes to my thesis. The other day, actually, I chatted with my father for like an hour on the phone, which made him very happy. I could just talk endlessly with my parents about my course, which is like the good part of my study here. Yeah, talk to my parents. If like my future career, if my final fallback would be being a teacher, being an educator of any sort of way, maybe a IELTS teacher. I've been in the UK for so long. Mm-hmm. Probably teaching English is the best thing for me.
How has the environment been for you here at Swansea?
Yeah, the environment is quite amazing. I mean, I love Bristol. I've been there longer than I've been here, but like Swansea is like a much smaller city, slower paced. But the environment has been amazing. I live in Marina, which like I walk to the beach in 3 minutes, which has been amazing. I've always been my city is quite far from the sea, and this is like a whole new experience for me. Mm-hmm. Being able to walk to the beach within 3 minutes, especially in the summer when it gets hotter.
How have you got on with the staff here, like your lecturers?
They're very helpful. And they do an amazing job at following up. University is just a big place. There's like lots of students, so some issues might fall into the cracks. But in Swansea, there has been a like very consistent following up habit, which is quite nice.
I suppose it makes you feel more like they care, more like you are a person and an individual, not just a student.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to international students, like the answers to your question might be tricky compared to home students, so like they need to find the answers.
So you've been here in the UK for quite a long time. You've been here a few years now, which is probably a lot longer than most of the other students who were coming into the college. Did you notice there was more care? Did you notice there was more help for international students studying in the college? Yeah,
I think the majority of the students are like in the college are international students. So they've been very helpful. I mean, the reception just always got students lined up. I was one of the student rep for the college, so I try to help out as much as I can.
What made you want to be a student rep?
Like you said, I've been here just longer than people. I assume I know a thing or two. I like solving issues for other people. It just makes me feel valued.
Okay.
Yeah, it just makes me feel I value myself. I take pride in helping people.
Have you been able to continue doing that after you left the college? Or was that just in the college?
I applied for being a student rep for my course as well.
Okay.
But like that's two different roles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many students who come here, not just to Swansea, but whenever they leave their home country, that social separation then is quite difficult for them.
Yeah.
Do you think that you were a bit more prepared for being on your own?
In a way, but like I actually suffered from mental health issues
Okay.
when I was in Bristol. That wasn't the best experience for me. I like to think that I was more prepared compared to other people in that regard.
Was it down to the COVID? Was it down to the pandemic, or was it being
It's
there?
like a contributing factor,
Okay.
but it's also just being alone.
Okay.
Yeah, during that time, my roommate got stuck in China. So I was here alone, which was not helpful.
How different then has it been since you came to Swansea? You know, not being on your own, being able to meet your neighbours and having that diverse student body. Do you think just having people around you then, do you think that's made a difference?
Yeah, definitely. You know, human contact. Even though I said I'm perfectly happy being alone, it's not the same as not having any sort of human contact at all. It's quite a different thing.
Yeah.
But having interactions with people is definitely helpful.
How different is Swansea to your hometown? Like, because you mentioned earlier that Wales is smaller or relatively similar size to your city.
Yeah.
So then coming to Swansea, which is smaller than Wales again, how does that feel? Like, how different is that to back home? Like, how different is life?
It's completely different, I want to say. There's no resemblance whatsoever that I can think of, which is fine, you know. But just there's no comparison that I can think of. My city isn't even that big.
Right.
I mean, it's the capital city of my province. Compared to other provinces, compared to other major cities, you know, Beijing, Shanghai, it's fairly small. China and the UK is like obviously enough of big difference as is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to in a city setting, Swansea is just like completely different experience for me.
Do you think it might be down to Swansea being such a student-led city, like a university city, and then because we have such a diverse student body across the board, do you think that just makes that community? And do you think people are just more used to seeing students, especially international students?
Yeah, definitely. I think Swansea got this reputation of being like a university city. I've heard about it before. Actually, one of my classmates from sixth form came here before me. So she studied undergrad here. Like, it's been a long time that I've known that like Swansea has been like a university city. I think it definitely helped. Like, people are more, you know, people got a higher tolerance for international students, which I think is helpful. Because in Bristol, the experience is not the same. But here in Swansea, it has been great.
Good. That's really good to hear. Really obvious question I should have asked you earlier. Why did you pick Swansea? How did you end up in Swansea?
Like I mentioned, my classmate from sixth form was part of the reason. So I've heard about Swansea.
Right.
The other reason is just I've basically, when I was like doing my application, was like just like several different universities. I can't even remember the others' names presented to me. I was like, okay, Swansea, that one I know. Yeah. Part of the reason was like the reputation. The other reason was just familiarity.
What was your very first impression when you came to Swansea?
It's small. Yeah, it's that's the first impression basically. The other experience is like it's a coastal city. Mm-hmm. The first time I came here, it's not by train. It's actually by a moving van.
Okay.
Yeah, because I moved all my stuff from Bristol to here. So on my way here, it's like I was traveling along I can see the ocean the whole time. That's my first impression. It's not as small because I have no sense of scale the first time I came here because I just went straight from Bristol to where I live.
So it's interesting you've been here in the UK for as long as you have. Mm-hmm. And there's been so many changes in the UK, especially in terms of the economy.
Yeah.
How have you found like the cost of living here over the past few years?
I think we experienced a spike. The time I feel like there's a difference I think was in 2023. I think it's also part of me getting older, as like you notice the price tags for your groceries.
Mm-hmm.
That was the time that I visibly feel the spike in cost of living here. But after that, I think it's gone back down a little bit. So it hasn't been that big of a challenge for me. But that period of time was actually, I wouldn't say challenging, but it was definitely noticeable.
Okay.
I've been doing some part-time job since 2021. So that helped a bit.
Right.
Finding a job here in Swansea wasn't very difficult for me.
Okay.
So I think that's a plus. Have a part-time job it just helps you financially. Yeah. And I think the cost of living, especially with a rental cost, is definitely lower than Bristol. So in that regard, it's also quite helpful.
What is it you do for part-time work?
I work with a letting agency. It has been very interesting. I've never ever thought about work for a letting agency.
How did you find that job?
I rent with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the short answer. The longer answer was I saw their hiring ad, like right after or before I was about to move in, and I was like, "You guys are hiring part-time job?" So I did my application.
Do you think it's important for students in general to find part-time work?
I don't think it's important. I mean, if you want some financial assistance, that definitely help. It's not necessary, but like it's helpful. For me, it has been like valuable experience interacting with people academically and like professionally. It's like quite a different setting.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's been helpful for me.
So we've talked about what you're doing now. We've talked about what you've done before. What's next for you?
Going back to China, trying to find a job, basically. It has not been easy. I don't know if that's a unique situation for China at the moment, but securing a job has been challenging. Mm-hmm. But I remain optimistic.
How is looking for work in China while you're here compared to looking for work when you're back in China? Like, is it easier here, or is it more of a challenge here to find that work?
Like, employer in China generally still favors like students who has the international experience.
What sort of work are you looking for?
Oh, a wide range of things. I play video games a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can secure a job in that industry, that would be amazing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which is, it doesn't really have to do with my background.
Right.
Rather than my experience in the UK for the past 8 years. I think it's like the job title is like business English. Chinese companies, they have to make contact with foreign studios, companies, that sort of thing. So there's lots of negotiation, communication that involves. Mm-hmm. That might be my dream job.
Okay, cool.
But like the pay is probably gonna suck, to be honest. But other than that, in the financial sector, like I said, I'm very interested in ESG, and I think that's like a very promising career, because the next 30, 50 years is all going to be about environment. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be a very promising career. And I think, thankfully, my education here is like a very strong supporting factor for that.
Amazing. What are your parents' thoughts? Have they got ideas about what they'd like you to do, or they just gonna go with whatever you end up doing?
No, the later option, they're quite supportive for the later options that I mentioned. They've been very, hands-off with my choice. Part of the reason I chose chemistry was like, they were just like, whatever you want. Mm. But like right now, they obviously want me to succeed.
Last question for you then. If you had any advice for a student who's considering studying outside of their home country, they don't necessarily have to be coming to the UK, don't necessarily have to be coming to Swansea. If you had any advice for them, like what advice would you give them?
Don't let the thought of studying abroad just intimidate you. It's going to be challenging, but the whole experience is going to be like immensely valuable for you, because solving problem in a setting, like in an environment that you are not familiar with, it's going to be very beneficial for you. So there are challenges that comes with studying abroad, but the benefit like outweighs any potential drawbacks, in my opinion.
Amazing, superb. Thank you, Barry, and thank you for your time today. If you've enjoyed listening to Barry's story and want to find out any more about studying in the UK or listen to any of the other episodes in this series, please visit swansea.ac.uk/international.